Welcome in the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for finding us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and more. We're also on Dash Radio every single day on their Nothing But Net channel. That also is free. That's at 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Check out the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. We had a huge week over there, so we're getting closer to 12,000 subscribers. Find out what the fuss is about. Royal Shepherd, of course, hosts the post-game show. We've got Clutch Corner going on there, likely, I would think, maybe Tuesday this week. And, of course, Floor is Yours, Extra Yard, and all of our extra programming. And the 5reasonsports.com website. That's F-I-V-E, reasonsports.com for the latest from Brady Hawk on just about everything Heat. The Marlins are starting up on Thursday. We're launching some new Marlins coverage there as well. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. That includes our friends over at Seltzer Mayberg. We've been telling you about them for a while. If you have a traffic ticket or something like that, personal injury, they do all of that. They do it better than anybody. Trust me. They threw out a couple traffic tickets for me also. But also, we've got this booming real estate market in South Florida. So if you're looking to purchase a new house or refinance your current one, you also can reach out to them for that. They've got an attorney-owned title company, and they can handle your contract and closing for the low price of $295. So reach out to the law offices of Seltzer Mayberg. You can give them a call at 305-444-1565. That's 305-444-1565. You got to mention 5 Reasons to get that $295 closing fee on all purchases and refinances. So make sure that you do that. You can also visit their website, onecalllegal.com. They're based right there in North Miami. Onecalllegal.com, O-N-E, calllegal.com. They'll be able to assist you with any of your legal needs, whether it's a divorce, a car accident, a slip and fall, everything else we've mentioned before, immigration, sports law. They do all of it. Everything is in-house. They're ready to help you with whatever you may need an attorney for. So anywhere in Florida, they'll help you. But they're based right here in North Miami, right off of I-95. So it's 305-444-1565, 305-444-1565, or onecalllegal.com. And now, tonight's episode.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5
on the floor.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, with Alex Toledo and Greg Sylvander. Part of the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back here on 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. Got the full crew. I am back from a mini vacation. We got Greg Sylvander. We've got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander and Tropical Blanket. And this is the first time we've potted since the pod we did after the acquisitions of Victor Oladipo and also of Nemanja. I think I did that correctly. Bjelica. I think I did that correctly as well. I'm not sure.
You got it.
I got it. So I nailed both of them. So those acquisitions, of course, Trevor Ariza was added about 10 days earlier, and yet the Heat keep losing. They've lost 6 in a row. There will be no Oladipo in New York on Monday. He's got a head cold, of all things. So all this time he's wanted to play for Miami, and he can't start right away. Bjelica did travel with the team to New York, or is traveling to the team, as is Goran Dragic. So he will be back as well. But again, still no Oladipo here. Still the team a little bit shorthanded. We're going to try to handle this episode in 2 parts. We will get into how the team's playing, because I don't think we can look past it, because that was a factor here, I think, in one of the transactions that occurred in the past 24 hours. But also we want to kind of focus on how do they continue to fortify this roster, because there was somebody we all thought was going to be coming here, LaMarcus Aldridge, and he is not. He chose the Nets. He chose to go where Blake Griffin already is. He chose to play with Durant, Harden, and Irving. He chose that even though we all had information, and I'll let Greg start here, that indicated he was coming to Miami, to the point that the Heat expected him to come to Miami. And Greg, that's where I kind of want to let you open here, because without dwelling on it too much, I mean, you had a report. I confirmed the report from 3 different places, and the report was the Miami Heat believed that LaMarcus Aldridge was signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yeah, I mean, that was the assumption. And when I tweeted what I did, that he was headed to Miami, I mean, they were operating as if he was coming. And obviously that looks wrong in hindsight. And I probably could have been a little more careful in that, knowing that until everything is signed, sealed, and delivered, that there can be carefully worded tweets. So that's the learning part of it from me. But in terms of like being wrong or right, I know that when I tweeted it in good conscience, that the person who provided me the information, as well as me, thought he was coming. The Heat thought he was coming, to the point that, I mean, you haven't seen a plan B like that they haven't pivoted to a plan B so fast. And I think that's an indication that maybe there was a little bit of, that they were surprised at the move. So anyway, that's where we stand. And now we kind of look at the buyout market and what may be available as it continues to dry up fast with Drummond in LA. And there was someone else who signed today elsewhere.
Gorgie Jen.
That's right, San Antonio.
Who signed with San Antonio, which is a bit of a surprise, except that Heat fans were in on that one, not really knowing the history between him and Jimmy Butler, which there was a confrontation in an elevator, which was reported upon. But there's also been more than that. Now, there may have been some of this patched, but I was basically told this is not something that Jimmy necessarily would have been on board with. So I didn't get the sense that was an option for them anyway. Just to close the book on the Aldridge situation, and then I want to go to Alex on this and kind of see where they go from here. I mean, again, to be clear, the Heat believed he was coming. And this is not to, I defended the reporting on Twitter, and I'm not going to continue to belabor it here. But the reason that's important is because, like you said, they didn't really seem to have a plan B because they believed he was coming. And, whether or not Barry Jackson, who obviously is an excellent reporter, great respect for Barry. Barry, whatever you write that book about reporters in this town, I hope you take it easy on me. But Barry reported that he spoke to an Aldridge associate who was also surprised. And that, that the Heat were surprised. Everybody was surprised, but that, again, he wanted to play for a contender. And the Heat are going through a 6-game losing streak right now. And we can say, well, he should be more patient. He should understand the circumstances and all that. He's always wanted to play with Pat. He probably would have gotten more playing time here than he's going to get in Brooklyn. I don't think he's going to close games in Brooklyn, for one thing. Okay, I don't see how they could. They've got enough bad defenders. But the reality is they believed that Aldridge was coming. He head faked them. It's not the first time that this has happened to the Heat. There are other occasions we can cite. There are others that people don't know about where you think someone's coming and they don't come. So let's pivot here for the basketball perspective, Alex, and away from kind of the reporting perspective. A, is it a big loss that Aldridge did not come here? B, how does he fit with the Nets as compared to the Heat? And C, who that's out there right now would you even take a look at?
A three-parter, huh? All right. So
yes,
I know the sentiment has been shared on Twitter ever since he decided to go with Brooklyn and change his mind, but I don't think it's a big loss. Like, I was cool with him deciding to come here. I thought it could have been an extra, guy that you can go to for some offense, but the guy is like for a winning team to try to acquire him. I think it's a year or two too late for LaMarcus. I think he's going to be a fine regular season player. Maybe he'll get some playing time in the playoffs for Brooklyn, given the fact that their front court is kind of a mess right now. Like, they have 3 slow-footed bigs that you're not sure about. I know Blake hasn't looked terrible over there as far as, his feet, but the 3 veterans are kind of generally slow-footed bigs who you're not sure about their fit in a playoff circumstance. And the one mobile big they have is a rookie where, Nicholas Claxton is a sophomore, but he didn't play at all last year. So it's a weird situation with them. I think that he can pretty much make it up with, signing somebody, just a backup 5 who can take some minutes in the playoffs. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think, like, if you can go after Dwayne Deadman or somebody like that, if he's in good shape, I think that'd be a pretty good idea. I just don't think, I feel pretty good about the acquisitions that were made already. So that's kind of where my perspective is informed by. I wanted the scoring guard who could defend, and that's Oladipo. I wanted an extra, switchy forward who can defend in different ways and different guys, and that's Ariza. I feel good about him and how he's progressing. And look, they traded Kelly, who was really important for him, and they got somebody who pretty much does all the same things he does. And look, a lot of people are really emphasizing Nemanja Bjelica's ability to put the ball on the floor too, and saying that maybe he's a little bit more agile, as far as legs. So I just think they've done a really good job to fortify their roster already. I thought LaMarcus was always going to be the 4th best piece out of those guys that I just named as far as their relevance to the team and winning in the playoffs. Because I just think these slow-footed bigs, every single year we see the same thing. If they can't keep up on defense, their roles get, they get relegated to 15 minutes or less. Even Kelly, who's been pretty good as far as relative to a slow-footed big, he's pretty good positionally on defense. Same thing happened to him in the bubble. So I think they can make up for it. I don't think it's a huge loss. And Brooklyn, they might be able to make it work, but it's a weird front court situation they've got.
Yeah. All right. So a few things on that. I'm with you for the most part. To me, I thought that the Aldridge role here was going to be relief buckets. That this was a big that eventually, if he didn't force his way into the starting lineup, and we had heard that there was a relative promise there that he was getting an opportunity to start. I thought ultimately Ariza was going to be the starter anyway. That Aldridge would be there for relief buckets. Another smart guy who could handle the pressure of big moments, even if physically he couldn't handle them quite the way that he used to. And similar to Iguodala, although Andre he keeps himself in the kind of shape that has made him productive at this age, whereas it doesn't appear that Aldridge necessarily has. I don't want to downplay it that much, though, for this reason, okay? We don't know what Bielitsa is going to be here. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well in Sacramento, but that could be one of those situations. He gets out of a bad situation and shoots the ball better. Okay. And obviously we saw Kelly played well at Houston yesterday, which if Bielitsa doesn't play well, Heat fans are going to be all over it. But the big problem here is that I don't know that Precious is playable in those moments. And I don't know that he's going to get there, because to me, he's only going to get more worn down as this sort of endless season continues with all these back-to-backs. And this is a guy who played one college season. We've talked about it. No summer league, none of that stuff, not even an NCAA tournament. And so I don't know that he's going to be available to you. And so I guess the question is, do any of the guys that are out there, Boogie Cousins we've talked about, but he's been sitting out there for 3 weeks, okay, and there seems to be no movement on him. So there's got to be a reason for that, right? Rondae Hollis Jefferson, to me, is an interesting player, but not a particularly good shooter. And he's not a traditional big, I guess, so they could do some of those switchy things. And then Deadman is a player that I know that the Heat have long liked. Do any of them make sense for you? I mean, Otto Porter getting bought out to me would be the ideal situation, and he's not a big, but I don't know that that's going to happen. I mean, do any of those, Alex, make sense to you?
Yeah, like I said before, I think my number one guy will be Deadman. Look, he's been out there on the market for a while, so unless there's something else going on with him that I don't know about, I think he'll be pretty nice. Like, he's been able to shoot the ball before. He's a solid, rim protector and rebounder for a guy that you would bring off the bench. And I just don't really think it's that big of a deal, because we're talking basically about like a 15-minute role in the playoffs, I feel like, more or less, right? And that's where I kind of feel like you can do a lot of different things. Like, obviously, if you can get Otto Porter, if he gets bought out, another guy that you could throw in there so you can have more bodies and not have to rely on Iguodala, like, that's cool. But I always thought this was just kind of more of a luxury than anything. I think they could use more size for sure, because Precious is not there yet. He still has a lot of lapses when he plays, but it still feels like the least of their problems, because relative to the other things that they addressed, I feel like.
Yeah, okay, but Greg, to that point though, I want to break in with one thing. Our guy Brady Hawk put a stat on Twitter today, the on-off numbers with Bam during the 6-game winning streak, and there's something like a -45 net rating with Bam off the floor. I know it's a small sample size, but that speaks to the fact that they don't have any. I mean, they're playing Andre at the 5 at time. Like, they have nobody to put there. So I don't want to downplay it. They wouldn't have been going after Aldridge if they didn't think they had a problem, right? So
yeah, there's definitely a hole up front, and they need depth there. I mean, when you're 24th in the league in rebounding and 29th or 30th in block shots, like, I know that those are like counting stats and very simplistic way of looking at it. But like, you can't run from that. And I feel like Deadman, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's recovering from an injury. I don't know if that's like part of the process of why he hasn't been signed, because I felt like he was kind of developing into a really serviceable stretch big around the league. Another players like Oklahoma City. There's been talk that Mike Muscala could potentially get bought out. And I know they don't buy out a lot of guys, but he's a lower salary player.
Kem Birch and Orlando,
that is a great one. Shout out to Crab Smut Peddler, because he called that one out, and it would be probably, you know what, that is the absolute best case scenario, is if he were to get bought out because they want to play Wendell Carter Jr. in Orlando, Kem Birch would be a perfect addition for this team.
And the other guy from OKC, of course, is Horford, and I know some Heat fans got excited about that, but it seems to me they basically, if you're not familiar, Horford played well for OKC this year. He's got 2 years left on his contract after this one at big money. and he's been a pro there. And basically they had a statement yesterday, came out and said that Al would basically not play the rest of the season, but he continued to be around his teammates. It doesn't, and that they would work out a favorable trade for him going forward. It does not sound to me like a buyout is coming. And you mentioned it. Ownership in Oklahoma City is notoriously cheap, especially in comparison to their wealth. They lost James Harden over $3 million a few years ago. I don't see them buying out. Maybe Muscala, they're not buying out Horford. I would be absolutely stunned. All right, we're going to get to the Heat in a second, but let's go through. I've one just out of curiosity. Andre Drummond signed with the Lakers. Heat fans are in on that one because it was a name, but there was never really any indication that the Heat were in on him. Does he even help the Lakers? I don't. It's hard.
I feel like he's kind of like a more evolved, better version of Hassan in a lot of ways. And it's just kind of some empty stats. And I don't really necessarily see him as a huge game changer like some other people have. I mean, I just have never been a huge Andre Drummond fan. The roles of him making boneheaded plays that are out there are enough to drive me away.
Yeah, there's a lot of JaVale McGee, but it feels like JaVale's cleaned that stuff up over the years. Alex, why at this stage would you not just bring in Boogie? Give me the counter.
I mean, look, I'm not completely against it. I just have my expectations set straight with Boogie, right? Like, I understand why he's been out there for so long. Like, it just hasn't looked good when he has been out there. And again, we're going back to the slow-footed big thing, which is kind of just the whole theme for this episode, apparently. Because, like, for example, you're talking about Drummond. I think Drummond is I'm not a big fan of him either, but I could definitely see him as a serviceable backup five for a winning team. I don't really see the fit to play him alongside LeBron and AD for long stretches, maybe for short spurts here and there, but it just feels like a really weird fit there. And so I could see him being useful for them, but it's just weird because, they acquired Marc Gasol and Montrezl Harrell over the summer. And so now you've got three kind of somewhat big name guys there that you were thinking about playing at five, and that doesn't even include Anthony Davis, who's your actual best option at five. So I think that's kind of another weird situation there in the front court. As far as the Heat, like Boogie Cousins, sure, why not? They got an extra roster spot that they got there that they can use. I know there's two, but if they use it, they go over the luxury tax. So I'm already just kind of imagining that they're not going to use that second one for a guy that's not going to play. So, yeah, I mean, go ahead, give him a shot, see how he looks. I wouldn't mind it if he can be a good, like, bench big for you who can score and do stuff off the bench. He doesn't look like a complete mess on defense. I'm with it. Go ahead. I just don't really think he's going to be a game changer.
Well, I think the question with him is always, will he go with the program, right? And I think the only hope you have that he would go with the program is he kind of did in Houston from, most indications. In fact, it seemed like he went with it more than Harden did. And also that he's tight with Jimmy. And so you would hope that would kind of keep things in line there a little bit. But the only thing that would worry me about him is if you do play him in the regular season and he shows something, but then you get to the playoffs and you can't really play him like you hoped, and then the sulking starts, and that would concern me. Like, you have to have a plan with him, like how it's going to go if he plays well. If he plays poorly, he just doesn't play and you cut him loose. But if he plays well, it's almost more of a problem because just because he plays well doesn't mean he'll fit well in the postseason. And I think that's, one of the issues here that they've got to explore. All right, we're going to talk about where the team is right now, not just the transactions. They're in the midst of a 6-game losing streak after they went through a great run. We can't just ignore it. They're not playing particularly well. And I saw tonight, Malik Monk did nothing the game after he torched the Heat again. So, I mean, there's certain guys that this just keeps happening with. Before we do, though, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Just watching the tournament, I had placed a bet on Michigan over at MyBookie. I feel good about that one. Go to mybookie.ag. mybookie.ag. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Again, the code 5. You get a nice bonus there when you do it, up to $500. This is the best place to bet. They've got the props during the game. You can play the live score. So basically, if you don't do so well in the first half, play it the other way in the second half. You can play just about anything. And also, the baseball futures are out there right now. Of course, the season starts on Thursday. So if you got a feeling about the Marlins or any other team, go to mybookie.ag. Gives you something to follow the entire baseball season, which we know can sometimes drone on a little bit. But see if the Marlins can go over their number. I think they're projected at 76 wins. So we'll see if they can get over there. So mybookie.ag, use the code 5. They got all kinds of different props there. It's a great platform, and you get your money in a timely fashion, which is always important. So mybookie.ag, use the code 5. All right, guys, let's get to it. 6-game losing streak. They've had a couple of these long losing streaks this season, and is sandwiched in between. They had that great run with Jimmy, but Jimmy has not been enough when he's played of late. And they were down. I mean, look, shorthanded, not shorthanded, waiting for players to arrive. They were down 30 to a Charlotte team without its rookie of the year. Okay. It's not, we were talking about potting Friday night. I mean, I wasn't really in position to do it. And Greg, you texted me and said, let's not, I mean, because there was nothing to say, right? There's nothing to say, but we got to address it now. Like, we keep hope trafficking that like this guy's going to help him and that guy's going to help him. And when they get healthy, and yet they're 2 games under 500 right now. I understand what the standings say. I get it, but they're still not a good basketball team at this stage.
500. Yeah.
Right.
It's a tough situation where I feel like not only the fan base, but even the players and the coaches have kind of alluded to like, let's just get to, like, I feel like it's like, let's just get to the playoffs. And once we're in a playoff series and we have all of our guys and yada, 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 in terms of all the different things that need to fall into place. But to your point, like at some juncture of this season, they need to create some separation between the Charlottes and Atlantas of the world. And it doesn't look like that's coming so far. We have seen, obviously, with the standings that a quick, 9-1 stretch, all of a sudden you're sitting comfortably in the 4 seed. So I think that like, it's not doom and gloom where you have to think that they're going to have to be in a play-in yet. But to your point, this is still the regular season. They still need to utilize their depth. And like, yeah, the on-off stuff with Bam is super concerning because you can't get through the rest of this regular season with playing Bam super heavy minutes and then go into the playoffs. Yeah, in the playoffs, you're all good. Let Bam play 39 minutes and then you don't have to worry about the on-off numbers the way that they look now. But how the hell are you going to get to that point is, I guess, where my head is at.
Alex, how do they get better? Other than adding Oladipo. I mean, where there are certain things that they've not fixed the entire season. The rebounding, these 3-point barrages that go against them, and then these 3-point droughts that they have.
Yeah, it's a lot of factors. And I think that's why we're still kind of harping making multiple acquisitions, because it just felt like there's so many holes in the roster and just in, the game that they play. So they need to start racking up some wins because it absolutely matters. Like, I definitely feel you, Dave, because I've been saying the same thing the whole time on this podcast, get to the playoffs. I feel good about most of the matchups in general, but they do need to win these games before then. Like, you got to get the seeding right. I think home court, even though it's a weird season with, most of the arenas not at capacity at all, I would still say it matters, right? Like maybe a lot less, but I would still want home court advantage in the playoffs. And look, I just think you can't go along like trying to kind of float through the season and not care about your record, and then all of a sudden those good habits and the winning habits are going to develop in the playoffs, even if they are working their ass off. I'm not doubting that part. It's just like you can't bet on something just clicking like that in the playoffs. I think they've got to get in a rhythm now, and that's what I'm expecting. I have high expectations for the rest of the season because I know like there could be an adjustment point with Oladipo, given that he's a different type of guard that they've had in the past couple of years. But like, they have more weapons now. They have more things that they can do on both sides of the floor. And it's March, baby. It's the season's almost over. The Heat usually turn it up in March. So I'm expecting them to turn it up over the next month and a half.
Yeah. And like another part of this is when you see the way that Spo is evolving the lineup with Ariza, it feels very Jay Crowder-esque. And, when I think about like all the bigs on the market and like even like circling back to the LMA stuff, like maybe there's a part of it where Spoelstra is starting to settle into the same thing he did last year, where down the stretch run, he really kind of shelved the 2 big situation. It's a little early, I feel like, to get to that, but maybe, when you're 2 games below 500 and you feel like you need to, pull a lever to get you into the 4 seed, like you go to it a little sooner.
Yeah, you know what? I want to pivot to Spo here in a second. Okay, one more sponsor I want to tell you about, and I want to finish this with a couple minutes on Spoelstra, because we always talk about what Erik can or can't do. We haven't talked about what he has done. I don't feel like we really evaluated his season. Perhaps we need to do an entire episode on this. Before we do, though, make sure you check out another sponsor of the 5 Reasons. Sports Network. Our friends over at Best Ever. Check it out, bstevr.com. The NBA platform is going up soon. It's a simulation that you can essentially simulate anything. You can put players that were not on a team now on the team after. So, for instance, once the NBA platform starts, you could take a look at how we talked about how Andre Drummond's going to look on the Lakers. You could literally simulate this against last year's Lakers teams. They'll give you a full game story. They'll give you a box score and all of that cool stuff. Right now, you can do it with NFL. So just go on. It's free. Unlike the betting platforms that we promote here, this one is free. It's not going to cost you anything. Go to bstevr.com, bstevr.com, just a couple of missing E's in there. And again, you just play around with it. Check out some of the stories that they've done. If you're a sports fan, I know some of these people that are on Twitter all day saying, if this guy was on this team, if we made this trade, just do it. Check it out on this particular platform. Try it in the NFL to start, and then check it out in the NBA when that one launches here in the next month. It's bstevr.com, and we'll have a new video up on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. We'll simulate something else Dolphins related coming up this week. All right, let's get to it. 2 minutes, guys. I'll let you guys each go 1 minute. Erik Spoelstra season so far, grade it. We didn't grade it when we did the player grades halfway through the season. Alex, give it a grade.
Damn it, you got to go to me first here. I was about to let that simmer for a little bit. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say a B. I can't, I'm as big a fan of Spo as anybody else. I'm not here to talk trash on him. It's just tough to give him a really high grade when the team has just been kind of under 500 for most of the season. And I understand a lot of that has to do with the circumstances of the COVID tracing and the other guys that have been out for some extended periods of time. And we talked about that over and over here. But I do think I generally think Spo has gotten the most out of the roster, right? Like, I do think he's gone to this system where that everybody, including me, has complained about for the past couple of months because of the roster, right? I don't think it's like he's trying to fit everybody into his system. I think that's just the best way to optimize the guys that they have, where it's, Jimmy and Bam facilitating. They're not always trying to attack, and it's a little bit of a balance. I'm just going to give him a lower grade because I think that balance hasn't been there this season like it was last year. I think that the offense-defense balance was there. Even though we wanted more from the defense, it was never really bad, whereas the offense has been really bad all year. So that's where I'm going to give him a lower grade. And the other thing that has frustrated me just a little bit about Spo, and he talked about it a couple nights ago, was just like the lack of optimizing Bam and getting him downhill more, because I just feel like we haven't really seen that enough. We'll see it time to time. And I understand that, like, it's just how they've set him up, and he's really, really, really good in the role that he is. I just, me and the rest of Heat Twitter, we're looking to see how Bam can progress into an even better player. And we see it right there, especially on a roster that is lacking rim pressure, especially with Goran declining. It's like, well, Bam is right there. Why don't you start using him as somebody who could attack the rim a little bit more as this roster kind of develops and Goran declines? And so that part is another reason why I'm going to give him a lower grade. I do generally think he's done a pretty good job, right? Like, I think the fact that he's gotten their defense to be as good as it has, I think is pretty ridiculous, because I do only think they've mostly played with 2 or 3 good defenders at a time. So I think that's pretty insane. And I think B is a fair grade for him.
I'm so happy that you got to go first and not me. It's funny. I'm going to go B-, but like a low B-, like we're teetering towards a C, and I'm being a little difficult probably, or a little tough on Spo. And it has to do, I guess, with a little bit of the inconsistencies night over night in the hustle stuff. Like, I just feel like there's a portion of this, and I know that, like, he's not out on the court diving for loose balls, and he's also not the one who's out on the court missing good looks from distance when they're moving the ball and whipping it around, and then they're just not hitting shots. Like, that's not on Spo. But there is a portion of this where when Goran and Jimmy have been out the way that they have, and to Alex's point, he hit the nail on the head. Like, why not just give the ball to Bam and go? And I know that, like, there's a part of that that's it's oversimplified, and you need to move the ball. For him. But yeah, I mean, like, it just feels like a natural point to almost like to cater to him to almost to the point where, like, it's so visible that you can't deny it. And I just don't feel like we've seen it in that way. And I don't know how much to put that on Bam or on Spo, but it's just a portion of the game where, yeah, Bam is awesome. And we always talk about Spoelstra and the way he maximizes superstars because he, LeBron had his best years under Spo, most efficient years under Spo. Bam's trajectory, all the long-term stuff is there. It's just about this season, and you just want to see a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm going to go B- on this one. And the only reason it's that high is because he has managed to make them a very good statistical defensive team, even while playing a lot of bad defensive players or below average defensive players. But I'm with you, Greg. To me, the thing that's been a little frustrating this year, and this may be somewhat out of his control, again, the injuries and all that stuff. I mean, coaches deal with that things, and he deals with it as well as you can. He doesn't make excuses for it. That's been consistent throughout his tenure. But the effort night tonight is not Miami Heat effort. And some of that, again, may be out of his control. It might be a result of tired legs after the short break, a weird season that doesn't really fit the Miami Heat way. They like to get their practices in, even though Spoelstra cut them back in recent years. They like to have a routine. That's why they were so good in the bubble. They got in a routine better than anybody else. Erik is very regimented in that way. I've always heard Erik's regimented about everything except getting to the plane on time. That one is always an issue. But the other stuff, he's regimented, and there's a certain method to his madness that the players kind of get to understand. And in the bubble that happened, but this year it hasn't really had a chance to happen. So I think some of this is out of his control, but this has looked this year sometimes like a team that's kind of halfway there. And, it's just, and doesn't take pride in certain things that they've typically taken pride in. I mean, when Malik Monk has that kind of first game against you, typically a Miami Heat team would make sure that Malik Monk did not beat them again. And he beat them again. In fact, he did it worse. And we've seen that over and over this season. And against bad teams, I go back to the Golden State loss. I go back to losing that game against the Clippers where they didn't have anybody. Like, I don't know. There's been a lack of focus. And again, look, the world is unfocused right now, okay? So it's not just Erik Spoelstra's team, but I have extremely high expectations for him because I consider him to be an elite coach. And so to me, the highest I can grade him right now is B-. Now, I will say this. He typically gets better as the season goes on. He typically figures out how to integrate guys. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm saying B+ at the end of the year, but right now, to me, it's a B-. All right, check out our sponsors. BSTEVR.com to simulate NFL, soon NBA. MyBookie.ag, use the code 5, get yourself a bonus as you bet. And also, Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm, OneCallLegal.com, not just the immigration, everything else that they do, the traffic tickets, the slip and fall stuff, but also $295 on your closing if you mention 5 reasons. We'll be back after the game on Monday.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.